Thank you for joining us today. I want to share some information with Idahoans on our path forward with the latest round of COVID-19 funds making its way to Idaho. I have plenty of concerns about the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan Act. At this stage of the pandemic, the massive price tag of the plan is irresponsible, especially when $46 billion of CARES Act funding from last year remains to be spent, and the Congressional Budget Office projects a stronger economy in 2021 without additional stimulus. The plan is being mortgaged on our children and grandchildren's future. They will shoulder the burden to pay off this massive debt. The plan bails out states on lockdown that have kept people out of work. The plan includes a multi-billion-dollar bailout for private pension funds that have been mismanaged for decades. And because of the ambiguous language inserted in the act by congressional Democrats, Idaho could end up subsidizing poorly managed states simply because we are using our record budget surplus to pursue historic tax relief for our citizens. We're hopeful the U.S. Treasury will put this issue to bed quickly. We've been working closely with them over the past years and found them to be responsive partners. If not, Congress must correct this injustice. All that said, rejecting the funds is not the right thing to do for Idaho. Rejecting the funds would mean California, New York, Illinois, and other big states would get to spend Idahoans' tax dollars. Rejecting the funds would mean Idaho gives up our say on how our allocated share gets spent. That is unacceptable. Therefore, Idaho will accept the money for our state. Idaho will receive $1.2 billion in discretionary funds to state and local governments to be used for COVID relief, and close to $1 billion in direct funds to state agencies for programs ranging from Meals on Wheels to public school support. That's in addition to more than $2 billion in direct support to businesses and individuals provided under the Act. The legislature and I are committed to working together on the allocation of the discretionary funds, and I will be traveling the state in the coming weeks and months to meet with legislators, business groups, and others on how to best move forward with the new federal resources. Unlike the federal CARES Act dollars Idaho received last year, which we had only 9 months to spend, we have nearly 4 years to spend most of the new money. That means we can take our time and be strategic and thoughtful in allocating the money. However, some of the direct funds to agencies, mostly for K-12 public education, are legally required to be allocated within 30 to 60 days. We cannot wait until the next legislative session to direct these funds to our public schools. Therefore, I have been actively working with legislators on a plan for them to take the required actions before adjourning, while setting up a process to make long-range investments with the remaining funds. I want to distinguish between the approach for allocating the federal relief dollars this time around versus the process we used for CARES Act dollars in the last relief package. When CARES Act funds arrived last year, we were in the throes of a crisis. We were dealing with a new virus and had little knowledge of the extent of its impacts. We had little testing, no treatments, too little PPE for hospitals and workers, and no vaccine. We needed to act quickly in deploying federal resources so we could prepare for the worst. That is why we set up the Coronavirus Financial Advisory Committee, made up of legislators and others, to recommend the best ways to use the funds to quickly respond to the crisis. We had only 9 months to spend the CARES Act funds, and we did so responsibly and transparently. This time around, we have nearly 4 years to spend the new funds. This time around, we are not in crisis mode. We've learned a lot about the disease, how it spreads, how to best protect ourselves and our loved ones. We have safe and effective COVID vaccine treatments to keep people out of the hospital if they catch COVID, and widely available testing and PPE. That is why this time around, the situation allows us to spend more time deliberating on the best ways to use the funds to support the next generation of Idahoans who will have to pay off the debt. We should not hastily spend the funds we receive. We should be responsible and wait for guidance from the U.S. Treasury. We must be thoughtful and deliberative in our approach. I believe we should prioritize investments for our children and grandchildren, since they are the ones who will be left with the burden of paying it off. I will push for the funds to go to long-range investments that will serve to better their chances and opportunities. This is in line with my top goal as your governor, to make Idaho a place where our children and grandchildren choose to stay. I value the partnership with the Idaho legislature, and I look forward to working with them to ensure the new federal dollars are spent wisely in support of the next generation.